Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and today we're going to continue our State of the Faction series where we're going to look towards the Skaven. So the Skaven have gotten a lot of love over the years. They have 3 DLCs under their belt and a FLC Legendary Lord totaling to 6 different Legendary Lords, all from the major clans and 2 quite high up warlord clans. The second row of Skaven, that of Ikit, Deathmaster Snickich and Frot, are all very unique as they play in a rather different sense to every other Skaven clan. They have fun mechanics, they have stuff that they even stole from other factions, because remember the Undercities were actually implemented for the Vampire Coast first, and all in all the Skaven are in a tremendously good place. This is the attention that went mostly to them. Even during DLCs, most of the attention went to them, and the other races, yeah, they didn't really get too much. It actually became a bit of a meme where people were complaining that Skaven were getting too much love, and then everyone else was just getting absolutely ignored, which, yeah, I can kind of agree. But the Skaven have always been that popular. They're so popular that people have been begging for them to even appear in the 40k universe too. Now, I would say that the Skaven are pretty much in that close to done situation. There's a few things that could be done to fix up certain factions. I don't think a rework is needed for the race as a whole, as, yeah, I mean, no complaints. And they could do with one more DLC. So let's talk about a few things here and, yeah, let's have a little bit of fun. So first thing is a fix that needs to come to Skrolk and Frot. This is something that you guys might not have noticed, but they don't start off with their specific landmark, whereas every other clan does. And this might not sound like a big thing, but it actually is, because those landmarks do provide some bonuses, like for example extra growth, money, some food generation and so on. And they are very helpful to all the other Skaven clans. This is why Ikit, Deathmaster Snickich, and Queek do so well here. Yeah, well, Tretch too, but we'll be talking about Tretch a little bit later. But we do get Skrolk struggling very heavily in Lustria. It's something that is always going to be a problem, I think. Yet, not having that landmark at the very start is a bit of an issue. Same thing with Frot, where, yeah, he is in one of the worst start locations in a sense, because you're dealing with a faction which is very unbreakable. They do survive a lot. The Kislevites are very, very strong in that sense. So that's why they do struggle a little bit. If they started off with their landmark, they'd be a bit better off because they'd get some extra bonuses which would make them a little bit better. Don't worry, if you're playing as Kislev, you should still not have too much of an issue. It's the idea of making these a bit more better for the player as a Skaven faction. It's actually really strange that these two clans don't have the starting buildings. I mean, it's just weird, right? The others all do. It's something that I hope Creative Assembly fix up in the future, just to make, well, more Skrolk than anything, a little bit easier, because goddammit, it is a clusterfuck in there. I mean, you've been able to see here some of the other ones, and you'll see all the bonuses are quite good. They need this to make sure that they can survive a little bit more. It doesn't completely change their game aspect, and yes, I do think that Skrolk needs something. We'll be talking about that in a little bit. But if anything, it's just for the sake of consistency, which is always quite important. Secondly, it's regarding Undercities. So the Undercity system is cool, but the problem is that to get your Undercities sorted, you either spread them naturally through the actual buildings, or you attack a settlement, make an Undercity, send a hero there to establish an Undercity. The problem is that the consistency of spread isn't too great. It should be treated very similar to that of a cult to make them more useful. You don't want Undercities near you because in most cases you're going to be expanding and you're going to be destroying those Undercities regardless. So there should be a random chance to see Undercities spawn up in other parts where Skaven corruption might exist. They might be close to other Skaven factions. They shouldn't really be in the same city as other Skaven factions, but I'm imagining that some people would say yes, they should, so hey, what do I know with that regard? But yeah, we need to see them more. Very similar to that of Chaos Cults, where you can see them in other parts of the world, because if not, you're just not going to use them. I barely remember that these Undercities exist, barring the one that Queek starts with in Karak 8 Peaks, because it helps you get the 8 Peaks a little bit faster. But in most cases, the bonuses are quite good. You can actually get some food generation and other stuff. The fact that it's not really used as much is kind of disappointing. So let me use this as an example. I've got this campaign here with Ikit, right? And the problem is I don't see the need to establish Undercities because I'm going to be pushing my way into the other areas and destroying them. Now, I could use the hero to go into Mirigliano, as I won't be going into Talia early on to establish one, but I want that hero with Ikit so I can get some extra damage out, because I'm going to be dealing with Astalia, and then straight after with Morga, who is quite the difficult faction to fight. Same thing with the other factions. Why am I going to establish an Undercity when I'm likely going to be taking over those settlements early on? If I can get an Undercity in different locations, I can use those as a spread of influence. I mean, in a perfect world, we'd have a unique panel where we'd be able to use food to send off a Skaven force to establish an Undercity, but just the random generation like cults would work well. We know Creative Assembly want to fix up the cult system too, so maybe they could look towards the Skaven just a tiny bit. Alright, we're going to start looking towards the characters, and the first one is going to be Queek Headtaker. Now, Queek should really have his own dedicated video, and we might do something because we need to talk about 8 peaks at some point, because there needs to be something centered around 8 peaks properly. The system is bare bones, and yes, you do get some decent bonuses, but there needs to be more incentive, and there needs to be a bigger fight towards 8 peaks. It's a little bit too empty right now. You can also ignore 8 peaks too, so there needs to be more of a reason to go there. But one thing that needs to be done is, and I've said this in a previous video, a head taker mechanic, right? Similar to that of Grom the Pauncher's Cauldron, where you see you've got 4 little slots there. You'd be able to kill off a legendary lord, get the head, and get some bonuses. Make it like a quest system. Make it really structured to be able to have a little bit of fun, and that way you can then put different heads there, get different bonuses for your faction. Again, sometimes copy-pasting mechanics is good. Obviously, it would need to be reworked a little bit, but you can see how this could work out quite well. And I've said this in the past, it's the same reason why Elspeth von Draken's mechanics are very, very cool, even though it's essentially just Ikit Claw's mechanic. When something makes sense, it should be done, and this is something that we've seen being done in mods before, but I know a lot of people want to see stuff uniquely, because not everyone actually uses mods. Mods should be there to supplement a game, or a character or a faction. Something like this is extremely lore-friendly and should be done actually for proper vanilla. So yeah, I'm going to be very annoying with this character because I've said this many, many times, and I'm going to keep saying this. Plagues for Skrolk. It's something that really needs to happen because it's a core feature of Clan Pestilence. It's something really embedded into their lore. The plague system is really good now. Thrones of Decay really did a number to rework that system and make it so much more fun. And it's something that I think that Creative Assembly do have planned in the future, considering that, well, yeah, they kind of redid the plague system, and it's agnostic now. There's no Great Unclean One art and stuff like that. So it makes it seem like, yes, they're going to use it with some other factions where it makes sense. This is something that could help out because, as you are aware, the plague system does have a lot of bonuses that you can get your hands on, and it does also have some negatives for the enemy. When it comes to Skrolk in Lustria, you are surrounded. Up north, you've got Gorok. Down south, you do have Tehenuin. You also have a very strong minor faction to deal with, as their garrison is full of Saurus. And very early on, your clan rats are just not going to do very well against Saurus warriors. So I think that this system would be very good because that means that you could have some bonuses coming in. You could have some generation coming in. It's still not going to make it an easy campaign because, let's be honest, the plagues don't really make things easy mode. But it will get you some nice little flavor, and just theming is so important when it comes to the Skaven, especially for a major clan. This is one of the things that really annoys me, is that Clan Pestilence is a major clan, one of the big 4, and it feels like a minor clan. Hell, if you go back a little bit, you would have seen that a lot of the faction effects are focused very heavily on plagues too. So again, it would just be really nice if this was finally implemented in one of the patches between DLCs, just to kind of say, hey, we've not forgotten about them, here you go, done. Now, yes, I'm going to be very honest here, and it's very obvious too, there is bias here. I care more about Clan Pestilence than I do about any other Skaven clan, but it's just because, yeah, it's my favorite, and everyone has a favorite clan, right? And finally, Tretch Craventail. So this is something quite important to note. Tretch actually does have a unique mechanic. You can see those in the faction effects, where units are better when they've got Scurry Away. You can actually get better bonuses when you declare war. In general, they're not too bad, even though it's only just for 3 turns for that bonus. I would say a little bit more would be very helpful here, because the problem with those mechanics is those are mechanics that are centered around Tretch. Remember that Tretch is a part of Clan Rictus, and Clan Rictus is actually very different to Tretch Craventail. Tretch is known to be a master ambusher. He's very good at skirmishing combat. He used to have a special rule called Stay Here, I'll Get Help, which essentially allowed him to teleport to a unit, and also they were very good at flanking and stuff. But really, what I would say is just one extra addition, a minor addition, would make this faction a little better, because you would have noticed that you do get bonuses to Storm Vermin, right? Extra armor and base weapon damage per rank. What I would say instead, maybe, is like the Greenskin upgrade system with the scrap, to be able to only do that with the Storm Vermin, increasing the capabilities of them, having a bunch of different options there, so you could even get them poison attacks and so on. The idea here is to have him something fairly unique, which represents the clan as a whole and not just Tretch. This is something that's just very well known, because Clan Rictus has some of the best Storm Vermin when it comes to Skaven lore. Like, people will actively buy directly from Clan Rictus. Now, it's not a deal breaker. I'm not too fussed if Clan Rictus gets something or not. Skrolk and Queek, however, desperately do need something, but all I'm saying is it would just be nice. Now, onto the missing content. So, when we look at the roster of the Skaven, they're practically done. This is a really good thing, because they're in a wonderful place. We have loads of monsters, we have loads of different infantry and missile infantry, a bunch of war machines, pretty much everything that you could have hoped for. Things have even drastically changed from the tabletop to the implementation in Total War. Keep in mind that back in the day, when you had stuff like Doomflayers and Rattling Guns and so on, they weren't their own units. They were actually just an upgrade for Clan Rats. So we've ended up getting more units here than existed on the tabletop, and it works out really well because you have so much variety. Sure, a lot of the Skaven stuff pretty much does the same thing. It's either stab or dagger, but yeah, I mean, it's Skaven, right? What else do you expect? It's because of this that I don't know if they're going to get a DLC or not. However, something could be done where we could get a DLC, yet it wouldn't be like one Lord option, one Hero option, and then a bunch of units, because there's simply not that many types of units. There's a bunch of monsters, don't get me wrong, stuff that could be found in the like White Dwarf supplements and so on, but since that's from an ancient time, I could imagine that they're going to keep away from that. So yeah, let's talk about some missing content that could be done in an interesting way for a DLC. First things first, we could talk about the Storm Fiends. So this is an End Times unit, but I do imagine that we're eventually going to get an End Times DLC, which could see this being implemented, if not just before. They are essentially just super rad ogres, but they are very, very strong because you can get them in different types. There's, I think, 6 different types, each with different weapons, where the weapons team weapons are essentially just grafted onto them. They've got access to Doomflayers, they've got access to Rattling Guns, they can also shoot Poison Winds, depending on the unit. This is something that could be done where they could go, we're going to do a Skaven DLC, you're just going to get all the stuff that was missing, here you go. 6 different types of Storm Fiends, because they'd be using the same basic rig, different animations and obviously different assets because different types of weaponry and so on. But yeah, I think something like this would be big hype. I think people would like to use Storm Fiends. They were horribly overpowered on the tabletop. There's something that's still used in Age of Sigmar, I believe, but yeah, in the End Times, they were pretty freaking nasty, man. And I say that as a Skaven player myself. Vermin Lords could be introduced, and this is the really interesting thing. You see, Vermin Lords weren't an End Times unit. They got redone for the End Times, but they were actually in the 7th edition army book for the Skaven, which is also the army book that the Skaven used during 8th edition, as they never had an 8th book. So, when it comes to this, yeah, I would like to see it being done differently, because I know what people are saying. Well, you can get an Exalted Vermin Lord as a Lord option, and a normal Vermin Lord as a monster, just like the Mono Gods do. Yes, I like that, but they should be limited in a very similar sense to that of the Dread Saurian. You could even have the separate types of Vermin Lords, because there's actually a fair different number of them. And I would say I would not, and I absolutely state this very loudly here, I hope Creative Assembly are listening, no Ascension. A normal Warlord or Master Assassin or whatever should not become a Vermin Lord by Ascension in the same way that a Herald becomes a greater demon. I know some people would like that, but it just doesn't fit. Skaven need to do something really impressive to be able to do that. What I would say, however, is you could get them as Lord options. You'd need to build up a specific holy building, and then you'd get access to 1. So yes, they would be limited lord options, but these are supposed to be really, really powerful greater demons, so it makes sense to make them limited. It'll incentivize you to build up those buildings, and there you go. Still, like, even if you don't like this, remember that in most cases you're just going to be recruiting Ratling guns, you're going to be recruiting mostly the shooty boys, so I think that this kind of works. So technically that's 6 monsters, well, depending on how many variants of Vermin Lords you get and 1 Lord option, but I'm going to actually be a bit different here and say 2 more Lord options should come in. The Master Molder and the Plague Pontifex. I know, it's a bit weird, but the idea is we don't have a proper Lord option for a Molder-themed army, nor for a Plague-themed Pestilence army, while we do have the Master Assassin and the Warlock Master. The Warlock Master, never really a thing. Master Assassin, same thing. So we got a dedicated Lord for 2 of the 4 major clans. If we had the Lord options for the 2 other major clans, everything would feel a bit more complete. Keep in mind that we've just recently had that with Malachi, with the Dwarf Slayer Lord and so on. So if we had that here, we could have a army themed. If you're playing as Fraught, you can have a Master Molder leading, for example, right? Multiple Master Molders buffing up your Molder creatures alongside the Packmasters and so on. And if you're playing as Skrolk, you could end up having the Plague Pontifex, which would be the Lord version of the Plague Priest. Then that gives you more of a reason to have themed armies. I love this idea. Obviously, it's something that I've been very passionate about. I've talked about this multiple times. Same thing with like the Empire recently. They got the really strong Engineer Lord. We didn't have an Engineer Lord back in the day. It was a hero. So again, going with how theming is important here, I feel like that would be kind of cool to have. And finally, there is something which is technically 2 units, but we're going to just combine it into 1. Giant Rats and Rat Swarms. So giant rats were a staple in the Warhammer Fantasy days, and they still kind of are fairly decent in Old World, even though they got nerfed recently. It's essentially just giant rats that can do some damage, swarm around the enemy and so on, which is why I'm saying that swarms aren't really needed, because you'd be getting that here with the giant rats having, what, 120 to 160 entities, maybe even more. Small units, very, very cheap. Pretty much as cheap, if not cheaper than Skaven Slaves, more or less the same amount of damage value, just melee, and that's it. They would be faster though, so you could use them to kind of flank around the enemy and so on. I like the idea of this type of unit finally being implemented. It's about time that we started seeing more of these swarm type units. They'd pretty much be the same size as the Nurglings, maybe even a little bit larger. This isn't a deal breaker. If it doesn't happen, fine. It's just they're a famous unit. It would be nice to see. I don't see the point in swarms, because this would technically be a swarm. So, yeah. Alright, so now we can talk about some legendary characters, and first up is a legendary hero. We spoke about him recently, so I am just going to keep it brief. Squeal Gnawtooth. This is because he is a Skaven Packmaster who could be found with any of the Skaven clans so long as he keeps paying Clan Molder, because the idea is he's out for hire, right? He's on loan, he's a rent boy, Skaven rent boy, have some cursed imagery there. So, yeah, he'd be a Packmaster, he'd be able to boost up monsters dramatically, which would kind of make sense if we're going to get like Giant Rats here, and the Storm Fiends kind of just finish it all off there. And the idea is, this one makes a lot of sense because he can be used by any faction. I know a lot of people would say Scar Bloodtail. I think Scar should be added in as a free situation, where he's only available for Queek. As much as I did like Kha'Zix, for example, it's kind of disappointing that Kha'Zix is only available for the Tamokon faction, unless you confederate him, because, again, you could use him with other factions, it would be viable, it would be very, very helpful. This is why I was kind of expecting, like, maybe Fatal the Tainted instead. Those types of legendary heroes should be an extra addition, I'd say, when you get DLC where you might be lacking on units, add in an extra legendary hero which is specific to that legendary lord. We've got a lot of legendary heroes that are specific to legendary lords. Hell, the Skaven have one too. It's about time that we started getting one that was available to all the factions in the specific race. And then lastly, this is why I figured that we'd be getting some sort of DLC. Thanquol. Gracia Thanquol is the most famous Skaven character. Everyone knows him. Even people who don't play Warhammer Fantasy would know him, and that's not because of Age of Sigmar, it's because the Gotrek and Felix novels were so good, and Thanquol was basically the Scooby-Doo villain there. He is a rather powerful spellcaster, but a lot of things go wrong for him. He's literally a Scooby-Doo villain, and it's just a character that a lot of people are attached to. So yeah, you'd have some sort of mechanic which would allow you to work with other Skaven clans, but then you could easily screw them over for some benefits to yourself. and they would end up wanting to send units to attack you. It's just that simple. It's how it always goes. The Skaven are very good at backstabbing, Thanquol even more so, because if he kills maybe, say, 10,000 Skaven just to kill one Imperial dude, he still killed that Imperial dude. One thing I'd like to see here is obviously the inclusion of Bone Ripper, because they are a package deal, and I could imagine the Bone Ripper being done as some sort of legendary hero. However, he'd need to be permanently attached to Thanquol's army, because that's how it is. They're a package deal. They can't be away from each other. There was literally a rule on the tabletop where if Thanquol was too far away, Bone Ripper would basically just shut down. What could be done to make Bone Ripper very, very unique is give him Daniel's mechanic. You know, the whole Build-A-Bear system? Why not, right? This is something that would work out quite well, because there's not only one Bone Ripper, there have been multiple Bone Rippers, and each time they're advanced and changed and so on. So this could be a cool system, and it could give CA an excuse to use the Daniel system, because so much money and time and effort went into that, and it's only being used on one character, which is freaking ridiculous. So yeah, something like that would be super cool. It doesn't have to be as detailed as Daniel. You don't need like 2 million customizations and stuff. That was just too fucking weird. Instead, go with change weapons. You know, something basic. Changing the weapons, maybe something for different stats, like a back thing, and that's it. Golden. Hell, on the tabletop too, you had different loadouts for Bone Ripper for the end times, so it would make a lot of sense here, and I think everyone would appreciate that, because you'd have a little bit of fun. I don't know, maybe that's just me. I could see that being done, especially with a character as big as Thanquol. They'd need to go all out. But yeah, these are just some picks I think are good. There's some stuff that's missing, and this is quite important to talk about. Obviously, there's stuff like the Rat Tank, the Chimera Rat, the Borrowing Behemoth, and so on. I don't see those happening at this point. I think that really what they need to do is just fill out the little bits of empty bits, and that's it. Get the Lords in, get the Storm Fiends, get the Vermin Lords, Thanquol, Bone Ripper, Swiel, and done. The Skaven can then be closed off there, and attentions can be then sent off into different locations. It's cool, because we're almost done. We're almost done with the Skaven. And it's great, because the more that we start seeing races fully finalized, the better it goes for the other ones. More attention can be sent there. Because the one thing I want to see, and this is, I hope, a sentiment that is echoed throughout the community, you know, as close to the full Warhammer world as possible. It would be fantastic. We don't know how much time we have left with this game, let's be honest, in terms of like active development from Creative Assembly, but I'm hoping it's going to be here for a decent amount of time. With all that being said, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let's start a bit of a discussion. Have a great day, guys, and I'll see you all again very, very soon.